Hello, beautiful personalities. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to Feel Good Living with Prue Bach. Today, I'm going to be speaking on my 10th episode with you about something that is the greatest gift you can give yourself, that is going to radically change the experience of yourself and your life. Wow, what a statement and what a promise, but it is so true. As Einstein said, let life's own experience, your own experience of yourself in life, be your greatest teacher. And my greatest teacher in my own life and through the lives of others, with the privilege I have of being a therapist and a coach, is that I have come to experience and understand that this gift that I'm going to give you today about a whole new perspective, if and should you choose to adopt it and work with it, then you will benefit from your own life experience with what it will give you. And it is all about self-worth. Self-worth and self-confidence are two weights that ideally you want to be balanced and high. But today I'm just going to focus on the one of them, and that is self-worth, self-esteem, how we think of ourselves. But apart from how we think of ourselves, I actually want to tune into what it's really about, which is how we actually feel about ourselves. Before I expand on this topic today of the power of how we feel about our self-worth, I just want to add a note about that. I apologize for the long delay between my last video and this video. I would really love for it to be a weekly update, but I have deliberately not promised that because I'm in this new phase of starting up my clinic, and I've had the privilege of being so busy with clients in my clinic that I just haven't had time to do updates on YouTube. And I also thought initially I was going to do Danish and English updates, but I can see because of time, I'm probably just going to go with the English and then maybe some Danish on the popular videos that prove to be worth going into in two languages. So apology for the delay. I would really like to do it as a weekly thing so that you can benefit from more insight, understanding, and knowing of yourself so that we can do lifestyle tips. Because I don't know about you, but I love to listen to things that help me to evolve and continue in my process of being a better version of myself, which means my life just gets better and better. So that's what this is for you today. What I have seen of transformational change from clients and what they have told me about what has changed their life. So self-worth, it is such a pillar. It is such what I call a backbone of which our life is built out of. So no matter what people come to me for in terms of coaching or therapy, I do a little bit of a health check on the self relationship, as in how strong is the self-worth and how strong is the self-confidence, because these two things are a bottleneck if they're not as strong and good as they could be, a bottleneck for how much transformation is possible and how good can life get. So they are things that are maybe an added bonus that I make sure that I involve in my transformational sessions. But specifically, self-worth. And today, it's not actually going to be like maybe expected. Self-worth, like anything in terms of topics that I'm working with people on, can be either the conditional, the physical 3D world. And if we look at this iceberg that you have probably seen me use before, the 3D version of ourselves in the physical world, top of the iceberg, that's the one way in which we can look at self-worth. But I actually want to put a lot of focus on this part of the self-worth, which is what we could call the unconditional self-worth. And what does that mean? Well, it means in terms of our actual self-concept, that the reality of our life comes to reflect in the physical what our inner perspective is. So if our inner perspective is less than it could be, then we're living a life that represents externally and in our own experience of ourselves the relative perspective. So that's why I say, as how good can my perspective be that can make my life as good as it can be? And that starts with the internal of our existence rather than the external. So when I work with clients, it's very much about the two worlds of the inner private life of ourselves and then the external physical world of ourselves. But the amazing and fascinating thing is that so many of us are actually living in a very limited version of ourselves and whom we could be. And therefore, also, we're creating a physical existence in our results, in what we're living in or with where we're studying or where we're working or where we're living or what we're driving in or how we're feeling, what we're looking like, what's our body like. It's the relationship to all physical things actually starts with the non-physical. And the non-physical is how we think and how we feel. So today I'm going to be talking more about the idea of how we can set ourselves free of the external and take ownership over the internal. And that's why today's session is about how to build the best possible self-worth that is unconditional. And that is where we each individually have 100% responsibility for that world. We also have 100% freedom to practice taking 100% control, which is why this is the greatest gift you can give yourself. Because despite what we might think, we actually have the ability to have total ownership. We have all the cards in our hands. So that is one of the greatest things I love sharing with my clients when they come, is that I help them to actually understand that it's a bit like seeing themselves in their physical body with their rational mind and their capability, my mind power, mindset, and my powerful action, that those two things are actually only part of the whole that actually is what our worth is. So that conditional approach is actually limited per capacity, that we're limited in our mindset and finite human intelligence and mind. But if we open it up to how it can be about an unconditional worth, this is where we actually come to understand that it doesn't have to be based on the physical world, how we view ourselves and how we feel about ourselves. It's such a radical concept that we can actually understand that when we discover that we aren't defined, we don't have to be defined by our circumstances, by the situations, or by other people. So I help the client take from the external what they have seen themselves through the eyes of the physical world as, and then decided whether they feel like they measure up or they feel like they don't measure up. And actually flip this on its head and say, what if we turn this view of myself on its head and let's explore how else I can look at it? Because the way we look at things and what determines how we look at things determines then how we feel about things. And if you've listened to my channel thus far, you will know that I have a whole lot of emphasis on feeling. So despite the fact that mindset is important and our thinking power is important, what is even more important is our feeling power. So how we feel, which is why it's called Feel Good Living at my clinic and on this channel. Because when we feel good, we're right where we need to be. So that is the easiest way to take something that could be complex and make it simple, is ask ourselves, how does it feel? And if it feels good, it is good. So unconditional, what does that mean if we turn our model of the world on its head and then say, well, what are you saying about that, Prue? What I'm talking about is, instead of looking at ourselves through the eyes of the physical world, let's look at ourselves through the eyes of the non-physical self. And that is where I have spoken from the start on this channel and now in my own clinic, which is part of the reason why I've gone out into my own clinic, is that I understand the power and understanding of that we are a physical being and we're a non-physical being. So let's look at this from this point of view. The physical being is this purple star. The non-physical being is this yellow star, triangle on top of each other, making a star. So when we consider that we have a relationship with ourselves, that there is a duality that is to do with everything about our life, that is where we need to start. Because this understanding of being a physical body, and we're having emotions through our heart, and that we have a mind, that's the physical self. The feelings that we're actually having, we think are based on the physical conditions of our life, day to day, with who we're meeting, where we're going, and what's happening. But it's actually not what our heart is telling us about our relationship to the physical world. It's actually about what this inner being, the soul, or the infinite mind, the unlimited mind, our inner self, which could be what I call the inner lion, or it could be our soul. So this could be our physical self with a personality in our rational, logical thinking mind. And then this represents the inner self, which is our soul, let's call it. So our intellect and intuition, or our personality and our soul. And that is what today is all about how to take ownership and control of our self-worth unconditionally. And that means I help clients to adopt or consider how they can see themselves differently. And it's through the perspective of our inner self, our soul. And in order to understand how we can see our worth through the eyes of our inner being and soul, we need to then understand what this inner being or soul is. And this is where I open up the opportunity through sessions of hypnotherapy that clients in their own experience understand the truth of this duality. They understand the truth of the fact that we are a two-part self. They understand the truth of when we close the rational human thinking mind down in hypnosis, when we say shh, then we are present with the other part of ourselves, which can often be called an awareness. There's lots of different terms for it, but basically no matter what it is, let's just call it the soul on the inner line. Understanding and knowing that we're a two-part self actually helps us to release so much of a burden that we feel that we are carrying. Because in this work where I help clients understand that their physical reality is actually based on their own use of themselves, in their thought power and their feeling power, and their electro and magnetic signal to the universe in their individuality is influencing their life. That can sometimes be challenging because we can feel alone in that responsibility of, if my life's results are because of me, then maybe I'm not feeling very empowered because what I'm experiencing is not what I want. So then the work is, well, how do I change myself in my thinking and my feeling so I can achieve and be successful in realizing what it is I want? And that's where clients can feel that they have 100% responsibility with 100% freedom, that they have then to start practicing taking control of themselves. But understanding the duality, that we're not alone, is life-changing. It's such a relief to understand and know that there is something beyond us, something bigger than us, something much more informed, intelligent, infinite, eternal, never-ending, ongoing. Like, wow, that is influencing together with myself, my life, and making it what it is, which is where we can understand that despite being maybe reasonably far off our track of success, maybe in our negative state of being, maybe in our beating up of ourselves, maybe in all that we feel we could be ashamed of, that we've actually not gotten that far away from well-being. So in hypnosis, this is where the client actually understands through their own experience that this other part of themselves, their other consciousness, is present, two-part consciousness. But two-part consciousness means that when we close this part down and we only have the other one signal available, that is a consciousness in which we can gain insight and understanding from. So this is also something that we have with us when we're awake, when we're in our physical everyday lives, because this relationship is ongoing and always present and available. So this is where If you consider this illustration that I also like to use in my clinic, that it's like having a North Star, where this inner presence, together with our physical self, helps in our feeling positive rather than negative, that we understand how we can tune into the knowing of our inner self and feel good. And in our feeling good, we're actually in a consciousness that is a success consciousness. And it is as stable and reliable and constant and present, always and forever, to find when we need it, like this reliable North Star. So what is this inner perspective? The inner perspective is an energy, and this energy is a consciousness, and it has answers to all things, which is our past and our present and our future. It's like an all-knowing source of information. Wow. And to think that it's present both in hypnosis while we're not actively involved in our conscious mind, but it's also present when we are actively in our conscious mind. And that's where feeling comes into it, because the better we feel, the more aligned we are in understanding in our own mind what our inner understands. So when we're feeling good, it's like us being a captain on a ship. And this captain is as informed as the ship's self potential and tuned into its own self and understanding of own self. It is on course, which means it's chartering toward the right destination. And that's when we're feeling good and we're in a lion state of being, which is successful, which means we're achieving what we want to achieve and we're feeling good in the process. And our body reflects well-being. This inner perspective, though, is something that we can train ourselves to also tune into much more. So how should I be thinking of myself? How should I be feeling about myself? How can I increase my self-worth so it's as high as possible? That's the question. And that's what I'm going to unpack with you now in a few ideas about how to raise your own inner thoughts, therefore your inner feeling about yourself, so you're much more aligned and harmonious with the inner being perspective of yourself, your soul self, and therefore you're flying high in a frequency of a vibration that is pure positive energy, because that's what our soul energy is. It's pure positive energy. So if we're going to feel good and if we're going to achieve success, then we need to match that frequency. And that's the key. And that's how I want to now talk about how we can get unconditionally higher in our self-worth. And then from a positive magnetic point of view, from that frequency, in that state of being, attract our dreams, either both passively because we're a positive magnet to our dreams coming true, or because we're actively tuning in and activating specifically particular dreams and goals that we're going for, that we want to phone home, call in, and attract to us, so we can realize our dreams in the physical reality. So let's dive in about this perspective of self that is beneficial. So instead of looking at our self-worth from the usual physical perspective, which is other people's point of view, which is situations we're in and circumstances that have decided, in our own minds at least, whether we're a cat in a limitation or we're a lion living the dream, and asking, what is it this inner self has as a perspective that I could, in my rational, logical, intellectual, physical, human mind, could match and therefore align with, and then from that creative force experience a whole new reality. So number one is the satisfaction we live, how good we feel in our life about ourselves and our world, is actually about an internal relationship. We might think it's because of the external environment, that our conditions, when they're good, that we feel good. That's true. And when our conditions aren't good, that we don't feel good. But there's so much more to that story, because the freedom we're all really looking for is the freedom to be free of the conditions and to choose the feeling we want to have no matter what. So this self-regulation as it could be called, self-mastery, is actually the number one best skill and discipline we want to train ourselves to own and therefore master. So that is, no matter what the external environment is, I can choose to be unconditional in it and choose to feel good about it, because it's not about the condition deciding. It's about how can I look at this that I'm experiencing and what is it that I can think and then feel about this situation so that I can actually feel, instead of negative, feel better or best, positive. Wow. To think that that's possible. And it's possible because we are a duality. So there is an internal relationship that we have that is always here. But whether we are individually as a physical self in a condition different to our inner understanding of it means that we can have a different feeling. But it's not about the situation. It's about how different is our perspective to our inner understanding and knowing. Oh my gosh. So a self-satisfied feeling is actually about how can I be satisfied? What is possible? How can I think in this situation differently so I can feel better in what I'm thinking? And that depends on what it is that the client is working with me about. But it might be about how they feel about themselves in their relationship. It might be how they're feeling about themselves on the job. It might be how they're feeling about themselves in their body and about their weight. It might be how they're feeling in their different roles as a mother or as a friend or with their childhood family, with the in-laws or their parents. It's so much about how we feel about ourselves in our physical conditions. So this internal understanding of what is it that I need to understand and know to set myself free from my dissatisfaction so that I can actually feel satisfied. And in my feeling satisfied, I'm actually in a positive state of being. And in my positive state of being, I'm in flow with my inner knowing. And when I'm in the same place as my inner knowing, I now have the same access to the same knowledge, resources, understanding, knowing that my inner wisdom has. And in this holistic perspective, I'm now flying high on a frequency where that knowledge is to be downloaded, that is accessible, that makes me able to understand from that perspective something new. That means that then out of that new perspective, new understanding, new knowing, I can create new. Wow. So self-satisfaction. How can I improve my feeling about this topic, whatever that is, that usually takes me away from my own satisfaction? How can I see it differently, understand it differently, to then make it feel better? And in my feeling better, I'm doing really good work, because feel good is feeling good, which means aligning with our both consciousness. It's my two consciousnesses are in harmony. They're coordinated, integrated, aligned, coherent. And in that, I am a powerful force to either passively or actively, in my involvement, achieving my dreams. So that's number one. Number two is, how much do I actually own my own opinions? How much do I actually acknowledge that I have an opinion? And how much am I willing to express that opinion and share it with other people? Because at the end of the day, our inner being, our inner lion force, our soul, is an accumulation of all that we have lived, all we are being in the now in our physical life, and all that we're dreaming of. So it is like a helicopter ultimate perspective, a holistic perspective that has all knowing about us and where we are wanting to get to. But it also knows what's blocking us in our getting there. So when we talk about actually expressing who we are, it's actually a huge deal whether we do or whether we don't. Because if we share ourselves with those that we're together with, personally and close and further out, what we're actually doing is expressing our truth, expressing who we're being, who we are, what personality we are. And we're so unique. We come from a common source, but we are all individual reflections of the ultimate one being. And who we're being is the personalized part that makes us individuals. So our personal power is in aligning our personality with our spirit creative life force. So when we're not expressing to ourselves or the external world and then living that truth out, we're denying our own personal evolution. And we're denying ourselves, therefore, the physical realization of owning it and expressing it, both what I personally know and what my inner knowing is. And therefore, I'm denying myself in my holism all that that physically could become by integrating myself with that knowing and then expressing it and also going into action and creating it. Wow. So that is a very powerful force in itself also. The next thing is, how much am I honoring who I am? So this third thing about honoring it and having integrity, it is powerful. We all understand that authenticity is power. We all understand that being a person of integrity is high living, high quality. And that is the aim of the game. But what that really is saying is, how good am I in my physical self, aligning with my non-physical self and owning that and being true to that, and therefore living a life of integrity, a life of authenticity. That's personal power. It's my personal self and my inner self in my X factor, being incredibly positively attractive and creating through that coordination, through that coherence, through that harmony, my true self from the non-physical energy into the physical reality. And when we choose to stand up for ourselves, when we say stop, no more, not enough, or too much, or whatever our personal border of feeling is, we know when it's enough, we know when it's too much, we know when it's not enough because of our duality. So when we can feel in our connection of our body with our mind what life is doing with us, to us, and we own it and honor that, then we are willing, as that powerful lion, in a natural boldness, in a natural courage and bravery, that it just says, stop, no, enough, I won't have it, or it's not good enough, this is not good enough. So it insists on what it wants. That is powerful in terms of creating a life that then becomes worthy of ourselves. Worthy, living a life that is worthy, starts with us in the internals, thinking it and feeling it into doing and being, that then creates the physical reality. So that is powerful in terms of both joy in life and also in terms of the sense of our worth. And then the fourth thing is about judgment. The human mind has a tendency to judge things as good or bad, right or wrong. But that perspective makes it rather personal and therefore very black and white. But in all reality, the perspective within this broader understanding of ourselves, the truth is, it is much more in nuances. So it's much more flexible, broader, wider, impersonal. So to the degree that we can set ourselves free of making things into a condition in the one or the other, that instead of that, we can make comparisons to others or the external world in our evaluation as something that honors me and takes me the right way because it feels good, or doesn't honor me and doesn't take me the right way, so therefore doesn't feel good, and make the feeling our guide. Wow. Because that's where our internal knowing helps us more than our intellect to know what serves us, because we don't always know what serves us, which is why Einstein said that the best teacher in our life is actually our own experience, because then we can actually feel in our body what is happening in our surrounds, in our relationships, in our physical results, in how we're thinking. and begin to be curious. If it's not feeling good, then it's not good. So what do I need to do, or what do I need to think in order for it to feel good? And that's when we're tuning into a deeper knowing helping us, instead of what we know, which is limited, which is why our limited mindset, intellect, can let us down sometimes. It can create results we can't see a connection with. But when they're not good, and it's 100% responsibility because of me, because what I send out is what I get back, whether I'm conscious of it or whether I'm subconscious, unconscious of it, I'm the one creating my physical reality. So yes, 100% responsibility with 100% freedom to practice 100% control. But at the same time, we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves, because there's much more to what's going on than we actually know. So when we allow ourselves to be open and invite something else anew in, that we can actually help ourselves solve the broader, wider, bigger problem, cat, and transform it into a lion. So big. So this idea of personal evolution, when we're a cat, we can recognize that we're a cat because personal evolution tends to be, when we're a cat, something that's forced, something that the external is asking of us. We feel like we have to motivate ourselves. It feels like a bit of a heavy lift that's not natural. Whereas when we're a lion in personal evolution and evolving ourselves, it is a natural thing. It's easy and it flows and it happens all of its own accord. So that's when we're in flow with ourselves, from the intellectual myself into my internal knowing, and from one to the other, like an infinity sign. We're in an ebb and a flow with my two-part self in a constant good feeling evolution. So that is something worthy of thinking about. Am I feeling blocked? Is it hard? Is it a struggle? Am I in force? Do I have to? Or am I doing it because I want to? It feels right. It feels easy. It's joy. It's success. It's working. Woohoo! That's leverage. This is where we understand when we turn our world on its head and start doing things so differently to how we got trained by well-meaning people in the physical world, in the 3D space alone. Oh my gosh, what a change and a revolution. And then there's three last things we want to quickly talk about, that we want to think about in terms of self-worth and how to change our perspective to own our worth, and then practice it and start getting physical results in our own life experience about how true these concepts are and how they serve us and feel good and strong and right, versus taking us away from our power. So the next thing is about accept. When we have difficulty accepting that we are both the unwanted and the wanted, we are both in the negative and the positive, that life can give us results we don't quite want to own, that we might want to pretend don't exist, that we might want to hide, that we might want to just forget about, or escape from, or ignore, or pretend they just don't exist. There are so many tactical things we can do as this cat that doesn't want to own those physical results that tell a very clear story of sabotage. It's just not working. But when we can look at that and own them, accept it, and then be curious about, how did I get there? How did I create that? What have I been doing with my thinking and feeling and my actions that has brought me where I don't want to be? When we start inviting new knowledge in, when we start asking then to receive and start seeking in order to find, well, now we're in that constructive flow of, I don't know it, but this knows it. And when this knows it, I can know it. And when I don't know it, I can ask. And when I ask, I can receive. And it's this internal knowing, and again, the infinity sign of co-creation between myself, my limited being, and my unlimited self, and the unlimited universe in the quantum field. Wow. There's a few options there. So that opens it a whole lot up to a whole lot of good conversation. And then the last two things I have talked about it before in my last episode about manifestation, and the one before that, I talked about it in one of the greatest things we can do is transform our lives by transforming our story. What it is we tell ourselves about ourselves or about our world, about our dreams or about our reality. And if we're not living in what we want, then we are so benefited by getting beyond what is and telling a new story, like the dream made real. And that's the same as this inner critic. Does any of you have an inner critic? A voice that says, you're not good enough, you didn't do it well enough, they're better, why did you do that? You're such an idiot, what were you thinking? What are you wearing? Why did you say that? Why didn't you say that? And it can go on and on and on. Check me out. That is toxic, and it's hard to live in, and it's hard for anything good to grow in that environment. It's hard for anything good to grow in that environment. It's negative, and negative attracts like, which is negative attracts negative. And then life just gets harder and heavier and harder and heavier. So at the end of the day, the cat life, because of our cat self, in our being, in our life, makes life hard. So what happens when we replace the critic with the lover? When we honor ourselves and we believe in ourselves and we value ourselves and we back ourselves up and we are our own cheerleader and we're our own best friend and we get really good at saying wonderful, beautiful things to ourselves. And you know what? It feels so good. So when we start to change the way of seeing ourselves, the way we express ourselves about ourselves, how we feel when we say those words that, you know what, gorgeous, you are gorgeous. You know what, you're going to have a great day. You know what, no matter what, it's you that decides. You know what, you're the captain on your ship. It's your life. It's your journey. It's your destination. It's your everything. You get to decide. Are you in control? Are you taking charge? Are you deciding? Are you speaking it into existence? And it starts now. So that's the last one on the list. It starts now. How conscious and aware are you of your now moment? Because if you're not aware in this now moment, you are definitely not in the position of taking charge. And if you're here and not taking charge, then negative becomes negative, becomes negative, becomes hard, it gets harder and harder. Or am I here just flowing and blowing without even consciously knowing? But the fun and the joy of real life living is knowing when we're a place we don't want to be and then making the course correct within to adjust the course, to change what needs to be changed from within so the external then can reflect that respective change. And then you should try it and experience for yourself how that worthy feeling just grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. Every time we do it, like the lion, honoring the lion, that means I am a lion, matching my inner lion. My lion and lion means I'm a lion. I am a matched, coherent, harmonious, good, positive, high-flying frequency energy mass that's attracting more and more of the good stuff, which is good life, good feeling, and it just is a whole new experience from the inside out. And it just rocks, where you're just like, yes, I can feel it, I can own it, I can live it. It feels so good, strong, and right. And that is the only evidence we need to know we're on the right track. So that is what is waiting for you, is a change of perspective. And it's not about them, it's about you. And it's about who are you listening to? Remembering who you are, and there I say remember. Remembering who you are. And in your remembering it, you're feeling it, you're thinking it, you're owning it, you're doing it, you're living it, you're vibrating it, you're being it, and therefore you are making the non-physical physical. So let's get unconditional in our self-worth. Let's own it like that brave lion, and let's rock together. So thanks for today. I hope you've enjoyed today. I've enjoyed giving you this information so that you can practice at home, either after a session with me, in client sessions, that this will be a really good reinforcer because there's a lot to think about and know and practice. Or just because you found me on the net and worthiness, self-worth, you have sought and wanted to master. Let it serve you. Thank you for now. I'll see you next time. And remember, the feel-good factor is the key.